So, guys, about that jobs report we were talking about last week, eh? You know, that whole thing where they were taking the victory lap and saying 1.2 million jobs and, oh my God, we're going to have the best month ever and unemployment's going to go away and Joe Biden is God. And, well, yeah, there's that. So, we're going to talk a bit about what happened there. In other news, all of the officers in the George Floyd case are now charged with federal civil rights violations, so we'll talk a bit about there. Plus, another story has come up about Derek Chauvin because, hey, it looks like he might be getting a mistrial after all, and my God, we cannot let him come back out and be a part of the world. So we'll talk a bit about what's going on over there. Possible DeSantis opponent has come out and said that Florida is no longer a free state, so we'll talk a bit just about what's going on with that. And the China rocket has taken off. The debris is falling everywhere, and we'll talk a bit about what happened there, including the fact that they lost tracking on the thing. So nobody really knows what's going on. Plus, we have a new ending segment for Monday here, so we'll look into one of the Ferengi rules of acquisition as well. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, 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 do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, sorry for the late start. I've had a couple things that have gone against me this morning here. First off, archive.today is apparently down, which adds a whole degree of difficulty to things because I use archive today all the goddamn time because so much stuff is behind ad blocker blocks and you can't read it if you got an ad blocker up. Plus, there's, the whole paywall thing as well because thou shalt not read the New York Times unless thou payest for the New York Times. Well, fuck that. You want your readership out there, then we're going to read it. We'll find one way to do it, but archive.today is down. I have used the Wayback Machine this morning. I hope that archive.today comes back up, but I'm using the Wayback Machine this morning just because it's there and I don't have to sign up for a new account for it, but I do not recommend ever using the Wayback Machine for any reason other than the fact that it's the only thing out there that doesn't have an account there. You should always be archiving everything. That's one thing, and I don't do enough of that over here. But you should always be archiving everything. Just don't use the Wayback Machine because they do selectively edit what goes up there and what doesn't. They have been compromised. They are owned by the big tech companies. They do make a good if you've got nothing else, but don't depend on them. But that's also plus. As soon as I got started, the internet shut down for probably a good minute because it took 3 tries to reconnect back up there. But we're here now. We're ready to go. And let's have the conversation here. But before we get started, head on over and check out my friends over from the Freedom Scoop Media Group. Pardon our dust. We are still under construction. So go ahead and check out all my friends while we are finishing up our website. You can check out great shows such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Freckles and Brit Show, The Breakdown with Breckenhoff, The Generational Gap, and The R-Rated Conservative, who is back tonight, by the way. After a week off, we will find out why he was off for a week. But go over there and check out his show. That is going to be at a new time. That is going to be at 9 p.m. Central Time. So go hang out in the chat with him and see what he's got to say and see how his last week was. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to that as well. So go and check that out. All right. Now that we're into everything, let's get the live chat up here so you guys can see make sure I got all my tech is going good and everything. Let's go and check this out. So, starting with the Dow this morning. The Dow somehow, and I think this is just the news media laughing at us at this point, they can do whatever the fuck they want, and we're still supposed to buy this. Somehow the Dow went up on Friday, in spite of the fact that the jobs report went to shit. And we're going to talk a bit about that because MarketWatch does have something to say about that. But yeah, in spite of the fact that everything went to shit and gas took another 10-cent jump, the Dow somehow went up. So that's what we're seeing come back up out of that. Up to 34,777 points, rather, not US dollars. The Bitcoin is up to 58,229 US dollars and 50 US cents. Probably looking at all the inflationary spending that's about to happen with the Biden admin. So watch your Bitcoin, see if that's going to be good for you or if that's going to be something you need to avoid. As mentioned, on fuel, gas, that 253 is gone. Even the 259 is gone. Gas is up to 265 at its lowest point in Madison, Wisconsin, 269. Most of the way across the board, we have not broken the 270 mark yet, but hey, this time last year, gas was plummeting, and we're going to talk a bit about that later on too, just so you know. So, right now, I hope that you've got a large tank and you can go back and fill up because, yeah, you might want to be sitting on that for just a little while. All right, let's get into this. Let's see what's happening from Investors Business Daily. From IBD, Dow Jones futures rise. Major gasoline pipeline still shut. These stocks are out of bounds. From Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures rose modestly early Monday morning. S&P 500 futures edged higher, and Nasdaq futures fell. Crude oil futures and gasoline futures climbed as the nation's largest gasoline pipeline remained largely shut during a cyber attack. The stock market rally is looking strong. The Dow Jones and S&P 500 at record highs, and a steady stream of breakouts from a variety of industries, but the Nasdaq growth stocks generally are struggling once again. Slim investors tend to have bias towards growth, especially highly valued growth stocks, because they typically offer the best opportunities for huge gains. But ultimately, Slim investors need to follow the market, including which stocks and sectors are leading right now. In 2020, highly valued growth names had a tremendous year. Tesla stock, Roku, Square, and Teladoc Health delivered massive gains as major holdings across ARK Invest ETFs, including ARKK, they fueled huge returns for Cathie Wood's vehicles. But this is 2021, not 2020. All of these stocks are showing significant damage. Tesla and Square stock are hitting resistance at their declining 50-day lines. Roku rebounded from its 200-day line Friday, but still down sharply for the week. Teladoc, which broke below its 200-day early March, crashed last week to an 11th-month low. Coinbase is the new ARK holding, but already a relatively significant holding. But Coinstock, after its direct listing debut on April 14th, only rallied for a few minutes before beginning a sharp decline that continues. Colonial Pipeline shut down Friday as precautions after a cyber attack affected some systems. The nation's largest gasoline pipeline operator said on Saturday. A few smaller branches are back online, but the main pipeline is still down, and it's unclear when it will resume operations. The Colonial Pipeline delivers gasoline from Gulf Coast refineries to the East Coast, as well as diesel and jet fuel. Gasoline demand has been ramping up as the pandemic fades. Goldman Sachs said East Coast inventories should be sufficient for 5 days. Gasoline futures rose slightly. Does that say gasoline futures rose slightly morning? I believe that does. I'm going to say that means that they meant to say Monday morning. Gasoline futures rose slightly Monday morning after initially jumping Sunday evening. Crude oil futures edged higher. On the futures, Dow Jones futures rose 0.4% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures climbed 0.1%. Nasdaq 100 futures fell 0.3%. A Citigroup downgrade of Facebook and Google parent Alphabet weighed on techs. And remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So, that's a lot of stuff that's happening here, and I am starting to not buy a goddamn word of it. I'm not going to lie. Just because we are starting to see, there's no way, with only 250,000 jobs added in April, that these stocks should be rising like this. Something else is going on behind the scenes. So I'm a little bit worried. I'm ready to divest everything that's in my 401k out of the stock market because I don't want to see that come crashing down. We're sitting at a point where we might be at the highest point. But this is not official financial advice. Check with your advisor to see what is best for you. All right, from MarketWatch. Give that just a second. That's going to have to reload because we crashed right as we were starting out. Stock futures struggle for direction after Dow, S&P 500 set records. From William Watts. Stock index futures were mixed on Monday after the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 ended last week at records following a disappointing jobs report that was seen keeping the Federal Reserve from tightening policy. On Friday, stocks shook off a much weaker than expected April jobs report, with the Dow and the S&P both ending at records, while the Nasdaq Composite outpaced its major benchmark peers but still posted a weekly loss. Analysts said Friday's disappointing April jobs report, which saw the U.S. non-farm payrolls rise by 266,000 versus a consensus forecast of an increase of 1 million, continued to provide a positive backdrop for equities. I would love to figure out how, in God's name, they came up with that million number and why they were so far below. Who was feeding them information that there were 1 million new jobs? Who was telling these people that there were 1 million new jobs to have? Because that's a big mark. That's a big difference. It's not like they said 800,000 and we got 700,000. That's almost 1 million jobs less than what they were anticipating. In our view, the jobs report shows a surprising pause in the labor market recovery, coming at a time when the underlying fundamentals and alternative data are pointing towards acceleration, wrote analysts at Credit Suisse in a note. Nevertheless, this report should delay any discussion of withdrawing accommodation until a decisive labor market rebound takes its place, they said. As such, we continue to expect positive equity returns, but at the expense of increased near-term volatility. Investors were tracking developments around a cyber attack on a vital pipeline that delivers around 45% of fuel consumed on the East Coast. Georgia-based Colonial Pipeline over the weekend said it closed the pipeline was the target of a ransomware attack. Gasoline futures were up more than 1%, though analysts said pump prices may avert a rise if operations are restored within a few days. Oil futures also moved higher. Tech and growth-oriented stocks, which are expected to grow earnings faster than their peers, were buoyed on Friday as the job data sparked a retreat for Treasury yields. Those shares appeared to resume their recent underperformance, however, as yields pushed to the upside on Monday. The yield on the 10-year Treasury note rose 1.2 basis points to 1.572%. Yield and bond prices move in opposite directions. There is only one reason, reading these articles, that I believe that these stocks are still going up. And even still, I have a lot of questions right now, but the only thing that I could possibly understand where I could say, okay, maybe this is a good thing as far as stocks go, not necessarily as far as the economy goes, but as far as stocks goes. The big thing I can see for that is the fact that the Treasury Department looked at this and said, okay, full stop, we got to do something else because we done fucked up. And now nobody's going back to work. So that could be looking at growth, and that could also be buoying up the tech sectors, plus, of course, oil futures because, pump price. But other than that, I don't see any reason why we see everything going up right now. And this is going to be an interesting day to watch. So we will see what happens with that. All right, let's get into the big news of the day, starting with Axios. U.S. adds just 266,000 jobs in April.